Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and a happy week start on DBS television. It is a pleasure having you again for another week of Viewpoint on DBS TV. Every day being broadcast from 6:30 p.m. That is the new scheduled for Viewpoint, given that it has been shifted, and the news also has been pushed up to 7 p.m. So if you want to watch Viewpoint live on DBS television, tune in on your TV set at 6:30 p.m. It's the start of a new week. We are very grateful that it was possible for us to be alive, and we are back to discuss issues concerning the society, concerning the economy, concerning Cameroon as a whole, and Africa and the world. Minute into the program. Talking with us in today's edition, we are having Dbs Notch Avi. He is a digital marketer and an entrepreneur. We'll be talking issues concerning what has been making news or polemics over the weekend and people's reaction on social media. And of course, he'll be accompanied naturally by Mangavenashus, and he'll be accompanying all our guests for this week's edition. Good evening to you, Dbs Notch Avi, and thank you very much for being our guest in today's edition.
Thank you very much, Vanessa. It's always my pleasure to be with you.
Yeah, it's for the second time that we're practically having you.
Yes, exactly. Second time.
Mangavenashus, wish you a happy week start.
Same to you, Vanessa. Good evening, and good evening to our viewers. This first day of the week, Vanessa, if you would permit me, continue with my,
go ahead.
Correct. I would like to greet some of my friends, especially a childhood friend. He is in Yaoundé. I'm not out of the country this time. He's in Yaoundé. He's called Mr. Kevin. He is a friend somewhere in Yaoundé, the city of Yaoundé. He wrote to me that he has been following us sometimes, so I think that he merits the greeting this evening for him and his family.
And special greetings to all those that have been texting us, particularly inbox. I cannot call the names of everyone, but they know themselves, particularly those in the northwest region, that is Bamenda and in Gaoundere. Let us take the first part of the show, that is the questions. Once more, you are welcome back. New phone tax policy on importers. Are there any implications? API, I begin with you. Yes or no?
Yes.
There are. Mangavenashus, do you think there are?
Of course, there are.
There are. And can this be considered as protecting consumer services? API?
To an extent.
To an extent. So, which extent? Yes to the greater extent or to the lesser extent?
No, yes to a lesser extent.
Yes to a lesser extent. Mangavenashus?
Yes, Vanessa, they are.
Yes, they are. Let us take the debate. New phone tax policy on importers. Are there any implications? This is a news that popped up over the weekend, and so many people are wondering, with so many facts coming out on how the new phone tax is going to be applied. But according to official information, it has to do more with new phone buyers. That has to do with those importing the phones and paying for the tax, or if they do not do so, the buyers will have to go in for the payment. So, if you're not Javi, what are some of those implications about this new policy?
Well, Vanessa, we'll start by understanding the economy in which we live, the world in which we live, the place that mobile devices have right now. You see, mobile devices can be used in developing so many aspects, social aspects, economic aspects, agriculture, health. Now, the minute we find ourselves in a situation where there is some restrictions at the level of obtaining a mobile device, it means that all these aspects, social aspects, health, economic, will be affected.
All right.
We might be asking ourselves, how is that possible? Let's give an example. We have today mobile platforms, which is health acquisition. We have mobile platform, which makes it easy for agriculture. We have mobile platforms, which makes it easy for social connectivity, and social interactions. Now, there are mobile platforms. Young men today, everybody is innovative, everybody is creative. People build softwares, applications, that helps even those in remote areas to be able to have access to some services which they couldn't have. Let's take an example of the mobile money services. Some villages in the northwest, in the east region, in the southwest, never saw things like Express Union, Express Exchange. But because of mobile money, today an old grandpa in his house can sit and receive money from his children. That makes it easy. If these phones were not there, even if these softwares, these mediums were developed, it will not be possible. It will not be practical, to put it that way. So these examples are just to help us see at what level mobile devices makes it easy for us to transact. There are so many examples, like I've mentioned, agriculture, health-wise, everything is involved. Now, when we get to the point where acquisition of these devices is complicated, it's more, it's kind of deterred, then we find ourselves in a situation where other aspects will be affected. A statistics done by the World Bank showed that in developing countries like our own country, Cameroon, a 10% increase in broadband subscribers has a 1.38% positive effect on the entire economic growth
of the country.
I mean, 10%, just 10% increase, not 30. 10% increase of broadband subscribers. You cannot be a broadband subscriber if you don't have a mobile device. Just that 10% increase can have a 1.38% increase in the entire economic growth of that country. So you can imagine, if we find ourselves now in a situation where getting these mobile devices become complicated, then the effects are huge. Another point is, we want to find ourselves in a situation where we have to make a choice. We have to position ourselves between a choice and an opportunity. Yes, taxes have been increased. It's a good situation for now. How is it a good situation for now? The government will have more revenue. That's for sure. That's the choice.
That's the choice.
More taxes, it means more money for them. But there is an opportunity which is being crowded, which is being covered. What is the opportunity? If mobile devices are easily accessible, people will innovate more. People will get involved in more activities. Let me take, for example, I have 2 devices. If I want a third one for 1 or 2 business transactions, it's easy, and it makes it easy for me to proceed. If I cannot have a third one, I will easily be discouraged and say, what's the point? Let me stop this project. Let me continue with what I already have. So which means less business. And less business means less opportunities and less money in the future. Let's assume that you're running an online store where you have to import things. And because you cannot have access to devices, you stop that store. Automatically in the future, you will not have enough, you will not find yourself in a situation where you have goods to sell. And of course, the government will not profit from you, those taxes. So, taking away these taxes for now, focusing on the opportunity of allowing others to benefit from them will mean more money for the future. It's even an opportunity that is being covered that people don't see. Another effect of it is, this is something that is going to affect, in quote, if I put it that way, the poor. Because if I have 100,000 francs to purchase a phone, which industry value is 100,000, it means automatically by the time I want to purchase that phone, the value will be 133,000 or 35,000. So if I don't have 35,000, I cannot purchase the phone. If I don't have the money, I'm more affected. People who have the money will not feel the effect, because adding 30%, 33,000 and 100,000 will seem like nothing, you see. So that is another effect. So those who don't have the means will feel that effect more. They will suffer more. They will be in pain more. Now, if we want to talk about the effects, Vanessa, we will go for like 10 hours because they are really huge. There are a lot of things to talk about.
All right. Thank you very much for your contributions. Mange Venashus, what are some of those implications?
Yes, Vanessa, when I listened to what Mr. Pierre was explaining about the consequences of all the implications of this new tax system that goes operational from Thursday, October 15th, Cameroon has been trying to encourage the digital evolution in the country. And by so doing, it is necessary that, like you were saying, that we make use of these gadgets. They're talking of telephones, Android phones, and tablets that are going to, witness a change or a cost, an additional cost in terms of taxes to be paid. But then, how would it affect us? We are living at an era where ICT, the use of ICT is gradually becoming part and parcel of us. Practically every sector of our society is becoming digitalized. We just take, for example, education. When we were blocked by COVID-19 pandemic, most schools went digital. Studies were being done on, online. Mm-hmm. Now, with the imposition of these new taxes, this new tax that Cameroonians will have to bear, it would kind of, cut down that. When I look at it, I see, like we were living with some colleagues this morning, there are some people who would love to buy a phone now, but they need to go find out what is the cost of this phone. Because when you look at the way the taxes will be paid, you see that at times it can be very painful. Because when I say
if the importer pays the tax, then the consumer will be able to purchase the phone and use it without paying the tax. But then, would that not have an implication on the buyers?
Vanessa, I hope that our
importers pay the taxes and the consumers will just come and buy and use the phone without paying for it.
I hope that our those who deal in the sale of this Android phones will be genuine, at least for the first time, to pay the tax, call it 33% of the cost of that phone, and really sell it out to the customers at that very price, because this will open another vein for corruption, for people exploit, to exploit the Cameroonians, because most of them now will go and declare the 33%, and when they bring the phone and tell you that this phone, instead of 100,000, it is sold at 150,000 francs, then you would be obliged to pay the tax, the 33% of that 150,000 francs instead of 100,000 francs. So I think that even when they say you are the one, maybe a friend sent a phone to you out of Cameroon, the way the money will be taken is too painful. Because when you buy your airtime, it is slashed from there, maybe removed completely. And I don't know how many Cameroonians use airtime as regular as such, so that they can deduct such 33% of the amount of their phone. One thing is, cell phones in Cameroon, the prices that are sold are different from the factory price that are made.
Yes.
Most of the cell phones that we buy here, they are a bit cheaper than the factory price, because some, once they stay for long, they want to auction them so as to clear off the stock and import new ones, up-to-date phones. Vanessa, I remember the kind of phones that we bought at a certain price when this thing just started. If you sell them now, nobody will buy them at that price. But now, because of, as technology is evolving, other cell phones are coming into use, and this one and the other and those expensive phones, they are gradually losing their value. But the factory price is not changing. So when you would have to buy such a phone and see the price that you will pay, I think that it will be very painful when you see that when you charge your phone maybe 2,000 francs, for those who even attempt to charge it up to 2,000 francs, it is taken off because you have to remove 33% of that amount until it is over. Well, there are
one of those that charge your phones with 100 francs.
Of course, it happens because you see,
would they be able to meet up with the cost?
That is what I mean by it will be very, very painful for you to discover that when you charge it for 100 francs, they have to take a percentage for you to keep on paying your 33, which you may pay maybe for 1 year. We don't know how long it will take. Mm-hmm. And Vanessa, I think that who will determine the factory price of the phone that I have? Because I don't know. Okay, take for example the phone I have that was given to me by a brother, a friend, or somebody out of the country. I don't know the cost, the factory price. How would I determine? Or the government will just simply tell me that when I insert my SIM into that phone, the government will simply tell me that you have an amount of maybe 60,000 francs, 66,000 francs to pay, because this phone cost at least equivalently 200,000 francs out of the country. And then when I calculate 60,000 francs to pay for a phone that I will pay and still keep paying it, because I still pay for the charges, I pay for the internet data, I pay for the airtime. Vanessa, is that not another way of trying to tell people that they should not in fact, go for Android phones. I think that many of us may be going for the old type of phones. Vanessa, another issue that I was asking was, when I listened to the Cameroon Employers Union last weekend, they were talking about Cameroon enterprises, and the Cameroon Employers Union indicated that around 81% of enterprises in Cameroon have websites. Now, these websites are means of communicating, which means about 81% of Cameroonian enterprises communicate with the larger public through Android phones, because most of them now, they depend on Android phones. When you look at it, you see that once we start blocking people from having access to, cell phones, how are we going to communicate with these enterprises? Are we not going to, would it not have an impact, an effect on the functionality of these enterprises? I think that it is high time we try to see how to, and when I remember the minister was explaining that this is not a new law in Cameroon anyway. It is a law that it has been there right from the beginning of this year, but then Cameroonians were surprised with it when it was announced that the implementation it begins on the 15th. Yes. Then another issue I was asking myself was, what is the target of this tax? We know that there are phones that are made in Cameroon. If the target was to block foreign product and promote homemade product, every Cameroonian would have seen reason with that, because we should promote us too. There are people who are fabricating cell phones in Cameroon, but we cannot see them, because those that come in from outside, they are more than what they fabricate. Even the cost, when you bring them, the ones made in Cameroon will not be able to cope with. But then if we have to impose these taxes so as to promote homemade cell phones, I think that would have been a welcome initiative, because they would have imposed a tax on imported cell phones, and then the ones that are made in Cameroon, they would have been exempted from it. But the law is, from the 15th of October, any SIM card that enters a new phone that has an IME, I think as an IME serial number, immediately it enters there. The Minister of Finance just note that this amount of money is to be deducted from this SIM card owner. So I think that it is high time we try to think of promoting homemade by excluding them from the tax, and then we can tax the imported phones. No problem. We will tend to use what is made in Cameroon, Vanessa.
All right. Thank you very much, Mange Vinashius. Probably the debate will continue as event will be unfolding concerning this phone tax. Pierre, can this be considered as a protecting consumer services? Yes, to a lesser extent. When we talk of protecting consumer services, that is me going to get a cell phone. I am sure of what I am buying and from who I am buying the cell phones. So would I be able to regulate this sector?
It will be able to a lesser extent, because when we talk about protection, we talk about security. And when we talk about security, what means will be used to deduct these taxes? It's very clear. Network operators. These network operators will have a base of all its consumers. In this context, mobile users, mobile device users. It's not a new thing in terms of protection. Why do I say so? You are using a phone, he's using a phone, I'm using a phone. We all are using a network from this same country. And the registration of SIM cards was imposed. Why? Because so that these network operators should have our details. That's already a security measure. So there is nothing different that this tax measure will bring. Because a measure by network operators has already been existing, which is already enough security. Registration of individuals. So automatically, when you are registered, you are known. You see the point? You are known. It's true it has to do with the SIM card, but once you're using that SIM card, you are known. So automatically, the level of protection, there is nothing different that is being done. Now, the second thing is, if we want to say that it will protect because
you don't have to buy a stolen phone.
We will pay tax, you will not buy a stolen phone. And let me ask you a question. There are two ways of payment. The importer can pay, or you, the consumer, can pay. Because from the article, double payment is not permitted. So when the importer pays, he has a declaration that shows that he has paid. He doesn't have your details. All he has is probably the IME number of the phone or serial number or whatsoever. That's what they have in the system, that this phone has been cleared from task. The question I want to ask you is, how will they identify the person using the mobile device? Will the person selling the phone keep track of the person who bought the phone from him? That is the question. Will he keep track? No. Mobile device sellers are there to make money. He's not there to be keeping track of names, who bought a phone from me, who didn't buy a phone from me, and all that. So when he sells you the phone, yes, it's good. He knows that, you know that, the government knows that, okay, this one with this serial number is cleared. Yes, you're using something that is not stolen. But then, how are you protected? How do you know who was using this phone? Is there any track record of those identifying those who buy each phone? There is no track record from the communicator. There's nothing of that sort. So in terms of consumer protection, to that extent, I don't see how it's protecting us.
It's protecting us.
I don't see it. Now, to what extent can it protect us? Just the lesser extent of, okay, you cannot buy a phone that is stolen somehow. Of course, people will still find a way to do it, but to an extent, at least you know that when you're purchasing a phone, this phone is being identified. You see, you know that, okay, the person, if the person selling you the phone is the one that registered, you know, the phone, at least if they come back to you and say, okay, the phone you're using is a stolen phone, you can go back to the seller and say, he sold it to me, and he cannot refuse because the tax number or whatsoever that is on the declaration shows that he was the one who registered the phone. So he is the one who has the phone. That is the extent, the small extent to which we can be protected. If you buy a phone and you have a negative feedback, you can have somewhere to lean on. But to the greater extent,
it's as well as they can tell you that you did not buy it from the original source, you bought it from a second hand, so you bear the losses.
Exactly. So initially, there is no major protection because the means through which the security protection are being imposed are already there. They are existing. We get registered. We get identified. Lately, in April, there was a new economic law. I think it's this same law probably. It was still, maybe the laws were voted at the same time. We say that any financial transactor, if I could put it that way, anybody involved in any financial service, buying insurance, paying water bills, light bills, need a taxpayer's identifying number. That was the new law that came out. It was in April, I think April the 18th. So these laws already are there to protect us. These ones are existing. So you cannot be involved in any transaction without having a taxpayer's number. That identifies you. I have a taxpayer's number. I'm sure you too have. And if you do anything that is transaction-wise and is fraudulent, you can easily be traced. These are already protection. The government has been doing well in that level. But saying that this new tax, bringing in tax on phones, 33%, protecting consumers,
You don't think so? Humbly, you don't think so?
The connection.
All right. Can this be considered as protecting consumer services? Mangavena shoes, you really think that it will protect consumers?
Yes, Vanessa, when you listen to what the government gave, you know, we take from the government. And when the government told us that the idea is to protect communication, to make sure that communication in Cameroon is secured, we know that we are living at a certain moment where, remember, a student was picked up from Marua when he made some comments, an Anglophone student, when he made some comment about the Boko Haram attacks, and he was picked up. I think he is still even currently under detention. Another student was picked up from the West region because he posted exams that were leaked with the French subsystem of education. Those are issues of communication that are raised up. There are a lot of criminal acts that occur in Cameroon, or that that go on in the country with the use of mobile phones. Mr. IP is explaining it's true. We have identification, platforms, or like the SIM cards that were recorded, that were registered with our ID cards. But the difficulty here is most of those who sell phones are not importers. Different people import phones, come and sell them in wholesales to phone dealers, who may even sell it again to a third hand before we buy it from the market. And the importer, that is the person who cleared the phones at the point of entry. Now, when he cleared the goods at the point of entry, the other person buying it pays the amount. when we talk of consumers here being protected, according to what the ministry was explaining, you know, when we get into such kind of deals, you stand the chance of, you know, Vanessa, the rate at which these cell phones are getting lost now is being reduced, because you can track your cell phone wherever it is. There are possibilities now that I can justify the fact that this phone, I bought it from this store, because they can you know, they can track the IME tax payment, you know, serial number, and get me to that store. In that case, I stand the risk not being, you know, tagged as having smuggled a phone. But then, when it was a situation where you can just bring in anything and start using it, they cannot identify it. We've had cases here where people have been caught and lynched for sale. A boy was even killed here in Douala, Bonamosadi, because he stole a cell phone. With this new method, it is possible that we can track it to find out, is this the phone? Is it the boy's phone? Did the boy steal it, or did he? All this helps us, you know, to avoid such type of cases. And another issue again, like the minister was saying, communication would no longer be. You don't just say anything. You don't just say anything. Now it is another form, and that's why you see some people are complaining that it is getting into private life. It is getting into, you know, into the privacy of Cameroonians, because they are able to track you and track the kind of phones you are using.
Manga Venatius, my question is, would this be limited only to civilians, or officials will also be involved? That's a rhetorical question.
Okay,
we'll probably answer that. APA?
You know, he has mentioned points about yes, security will exist and all that. Now you can know who is using which phone and who is not using the phone. We're in Douala. When I get to Ndokoti, I buy a SIM card. They tell you on a deux catégories de puces. We have that which is registered, that which is not registered. I want the one that is registered. I take the one that is registered, probably by a grandmother that was already dead 10 years ago. I take the SIM card, I plug it in a new device that I bought, and I ensure that from the seller, I told him I want a device that is not yet, that is tax-free, that has not been identified.
Yes.
I take the device, I take a SIM card that has an identifier who has been there 10 years ago. I plug it inside, I put credit in the file, in the SIM card, and they deduct the money, and it's cut off. I pay my 33% and start using the phone freely. Who tracks me for that?
All right. A question mark. We are ending today with a lot of questions still to be answered. Thank you very much, APF, for coming.
Thank you very much.
Manga Venatius, thank you as well for your contributions. Ladies and gentlemen, well, it is a bitter pill to swallow, but we will have to do with it. In the meantime, we're looking how government is going to regulate that sector. That was it for today's edition. Thank you very much for watching. See you tomorrow, God willing. Goodbye.